Hi, everybody. This is Tony Lawand from Interface Media and One World Media, and I am here with the esteemed Salim Ismail. And it has been a pleasure. I just heard you. I just met you for the first time, and listening to you, I loved everything I heard about you. You're a humanitarian. You're a philanthropist. You're a rocket scientist, from what I can gather. Everything else. So we're here at Decode Zone. They were nice enough. How did you meet these guys, by the way?
Michael Janssen. Actually met him years ago because he did the graphics design for my book.
Okay.
And then he became a maven in the NFT space. And so he dragged me into this and said, come and join. And I just love the fact that this was kind of a nonprofit community gathering. And that's so great. And I think it's such an important space that it's where it was worth doing.
Okay. So you're with you're on the board of X Prize, which is one of the most biggest philanthropists gift giving, I guess you'd call it. We won't mention the Tesla guy that you're connected with, but we know who he is. But there's a lot of other guys on that board. And how did that board get created? Because you guys, was it designed that you should all be in different worlds as far as backgrounds?
Yeah, you want diversity on a board anyway, just because then you have much richer creativity that comes from it. Peter Diamandis is the main driver of that, as he was of Singularity University. And I met him because I'd set up a relationship between Yahoo and NASA to do some interesting projects. I was the head of innovation at Yahoo. And one day the NASA guy said, hey, we're helping create this thing. Do you want to come along? Never heard of Peter or Ray or the Singularity or even X Prize. And I asked a lot of questions. And Peter said, do you want to get involved? And so Peter and I have become very close over the last 15 years, and we've done a lot of work together. He's actually co-authoring the second edition of the book that I'm putting out.
What's the name of the book?
It's called Exponential Organizations.
Excellent.
The
Okay.
idea being, how do you scale an org structure as fast as you can scale technology? We know how to scale technology, but building the actual organization is painfully incremental and linear. And yet the last decade or so, we've seen a new breed of organization emerge, and we've kind of tagged that model and said, here's the characteristics that you need to apply. And so Peter and I have become pretty close, and he asked me to come on the board. And so the other reason is we've built an ecosystem around my book of now something like 18,000 consultants and entrepreneurs around the world. And we use the prize model pretty heavily to drive new thinking in our community. So every time we have a problem to solve, we plant a little prize in the community and say, anybody who wants to work on this can get this prize, and we solve that problem.
Money's a real driver for that. And
it turns out to be the genius between X Prize. It turns out if you put up a $10 million prize, about 30 teams competing for the $10 million will spend collectively about $150 million on R&D. And so the collective innovation is unbelievable. You get a 15 times leverage on our ROI.
Now, what happens with that? I saw the water creation, which changed the world. I mean, let's face it. If you can create water from the air at less than 2 cents a liter, if I remember right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a world changer. And I've lived in Africa. I've lived in third world countries. I've been all over. I was like you. As a kid, we ran all over the place. That would most definitely change the world. I mean, I was involved with the Navajo Nation in the U.S., and you'd think in the middle of New Mexico, in the four corners of one of the most richest, populous areas, there's no water in a lot of those places. It's
a huge issue.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, and it's like after energy, it's the biggest. We don't see that problem here in the Western world much, but anywhere in developing environments, about 3 billion people don't have access to ready water. Right, and so when you can have, so what we do is we spur enough innovation that you get to enough companies operating in the space that venture funding then comes in, and then it totally takes off. So for example, when we did the SpaceX Prize, governments had stopped funding space after the Cold War and didn't want to take a risk. So we put up a $10 million prize, and sure enough, $150 million of R&D was spent by about 30 teams. And now we have $1 trillion space industry that didn't exist. So you get.
Is that the way Elon got started with that? Or
yeah, it's like the engineers that he has at SpaceX all came from teams trying to win the X Prize. So it brings enough interest, public interest, that a lot of people get involved, get passionate about that problem, and then companies start to form around those right after that. So all the engineers at Blue Origin, SpaceX, Virgin Galactic are all people that competed for the prize in different ways. The source of this was the source of X Prize was Peter happened to read the biography of Charles Lindbergh, who crossed the Atlantic 100 years ago for the first time and did it to win a prize. And it turns out that somebody put up a $25,000 prize, about $3 million in today's money. And sure enough, about 30 teams spent $150,000 trying to win $450,000 trying to win the $25,000. So one team happened to invent flaps, and the other team invented the right type of landing gear. And collectively, that then transformed the commercial aviation space and airplane flight as we know it today. So that's what spurred him to create X Prize as a general model and just give prizes where we see massive failures.
Let me ask you a real simple question. You guys have designed the plan. So you're, what are you about a dozen, 14 of you on the X Prize?
On the board.
On the board.
The board and donors and benefactors, it's actually more than that. It's probably about 50 people collectively across an innovation board, the governance board where I sit, and then a board of trustees, etc.
Okay, so the government's got trillions of dollars that they're wasting every year.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the government turn around and say, hey, you know what, you guys created a great model. Let us give you the money.
Yes.
Just keep going, do what you're doing, but let's do it across the world.
In fact, the US federal government has actually authorized all of its agencies to use the prize model to drive innovation because they found it so highly leveraged. It's just that people with an old mentality want to commission research. And when you put up a prize, you don't know what you're going to get. So they don't want to take on that extra risk or aren't able to take on that unknowingness. I'll give you a great example around the Super Bowl ads. Doritos used to spend like $2 million producing a Super Bowl ad. And they finally went, okay, this is crazy. And we're not getting that creative an idea out of our agency. So they put up a $100,000 prize for any fan, any normal person who just want to create a Doritos ad. Like 200 submissions come in, and the bet is that one of the 200 will be more interesting than the $2 million ad they would have commissioned for. And it works 100% of the time. It's because 200 people making creative ads is totally going to beat the creativity of one agency trying to do something.
I think you hit
and
it
now,
there.
now every year they just do a $100,000 prize, and like it's unbelievable from galvanizing a community, etc. So the prize model turns out to be because we're so innately driven to compete as human beings, especially when it's for something altruistic and decent as like solving carbon extraction or water extraction out of the atmosphere.
You know how much brain power is sitting in somebody's living room with a guy in shorts and a t-shirt, or a woman sitting there just with an idea in her head that if we could harness all that.
Yeah.
And that's worldwide. I mean, how many billions of people?
Well, this is what I think what the internet allows us to do. It allows us to tap into that amazing amount of cognitive surplus. Right?
I mean, it's like the music industry has been changed by the general talent stages that are out there. The America's Got Talent type of thing. Where you get Joe Blow, or a woman.
That's right. You never know.
Can just come in, kids, whatever.
My favorite example is a problem in technology in the medical world called protein folding. And when a protein kind of starts to expand, you never know how it's going to fold into the next level. And so they created a global challenge for whoever could work on this problem. And it turns out the best person in the world is a hairdresser from the north of England, who she just works at a hairdresser every day. But her brain is so perfect for this problem. She's the best protein folding person in the world. And she's literally a hairdresser. So we now have that ability. How many Mozarts did we not be able to hear from because they grew up in the slums of Bangladesh, and they grew up and they died and we never heard from them. Right? So I think that is now what enables humanity at the next level. I think some of these technologies bring that out.
I was talking to you earlier, and you tell me where this will go in the future. I was talking to you earlier about a young lady. I'm 28 years old, single mom, out of South Florida, which near where you're from. And I've been mentoring her on. She's developed an educational metaverse. Now, it's crazy what this young girl could do in her, in her living room, off her own computer. Now, she created something that will give every kid or every parent the ability to steer the educational system, where you get Joe Blow, or a woman.
That's right. You never know.
Can just come in, kids, whatever.
My favorite example is a problem in technology in the medical world called protein folding. And when a protein kind of starts to expand, you never know how it's going to fold into the next level. And so they created a global challenge for whoever could work on this problem. And it turns out the best person in the world is a hairdresser from the north of England, who she just works at a hairdresser every day. But her brain is so perfect for this problem. She's the best protein folding person in the world. And she's literally a hairdresser. And so we now have that ability. You know, how many Mozarts did we not be able to hear from because they grew up in the slums of Bangladesh, and they grew up and they died, and we never heard from them.
Yeah.
Right? So that I think that is now what enables humanity at the next level. I think some of these technologies bring that out.
I was talking to you earlier, and you tell me where this will go in the future. I was talking to you earlier about a young lady. I'm 20 years old, single mom, out of South Florida, which near where you're from. And I've been mentoring her on. She's developed an educational metaverse. Now, it's crazy what this young girl could do in her, in her living room, off her own computer. Now, she created something that will give every kid or every parent the ability to steer the educational system. Okay, as we know, 99% are in public schools. Probably a lot of them are not well taught. Let's face it.
Right.
I mean, teachers are having a hard time. So how do you find that brain power? How do you find that kid that's been neglected, or whatever word you want to use for that? And where do you find them? How do you find them? And how do you educate them and get them to that level that, the kids that got the money, where they don't, where do you see that going, the metaverse with the educational system?
The thing that I find is that the ones that are going to win are the kids that find their passion early and have the gumption to just follow it. Right? You take the great artists or singers or sports folks, they came across a skill, they fell deeply in love with that skill, domain, problem space, and they just kind of went after it. And then they will find the technologies and the learning, etc. What I found, we do education today in a push model. You get a bunch of kids into a classroom and you're trying to cram algebra into them. The best model we've seen is something called democratic education, where they have classes going on in different subjects with kids aged 6 to 16 in each class, say geography or physics or whatever. The elder kids teach the younger kids, and the teacher is a facilitator. There's no better way of understanding something than by trying to teach it.
Of course.
And when a child arrives, the first thing they do is, what's your passion? What do you want to do when you get out of school? And the kid may go, I want to be an astronaut. Great, well then you need astrophysics, you need to know engineering, you need to know about orbital pathways, etc. If 6 months later the kid changes their mind and says, I want to be a fireman, then great, now you need safety and chemical understanding and pyrotechnics and God knows what. They literally form the curriculum based on what the child wants to do. And so it's always driven, that aligns the interests of the school and the teacher and the child. And yet they're picking up the problems, the learnings along the way, and pulling the skills they need to for that problem space. I think that's what will drive the future of education. We'll shift from push-based education systems to pull-based learning systems. Like anybody takes a job today, you pull down the knowledge you need for that job.
Sure.
Right? The most valuable employees and colleagues anybody has are the ones who learn the fastest. And so I think what's fascinating about what the work she's doing is that will enable that to happen. Like kids will just start to pull down knowledge that they find interesting and self-learn to some extent.
Now, are we hurting ourselves, because this has been a big debate, are we hurting ourselves putting, like the Zoom school, as we know with the shutdowns, everybody had to go to school, and I take my little one, as a good example. The Zoom school, even though it was great, and it plugged the hole, it gave the kids the ability to still stay up, but I think they were still a little bit behind. So is not that face-to-face learning, taking, let's say as a you college professor and everything else, but is that face-to-face? Are we losing that with the online education, or is this just a good addition or access to kids that don't have it?
I think it's an addition, but I don't think it replaces. The reason is that younger children, especially the younger they are, learn the most by tactile interaction, and they learn from each other. Plus, you're building Lego, right? As opposed to virtually. It turns out that until about 12 or 13, you can't process a digital environment. Like you learn by holding things and pulling things apart, and this is why the best learning tools for young children are physical objects, books with pop-ups in them, because they can feel and that tactile need is really critical, especially in the younger ones. As they get older, they get a little bit more able to handle the thing. The best model we've seen is a woman out of Chicago. Her name is Nicole Dreisky. She's created a program called Screen Smart, which when a child is in front of a screen, they tend to go passive and check out because they can't process the screen until they get much, much older. The neocortex hasn't fully formed. So she's created a program where you trigger higher order thinking while the child is watching the screen. And she's literally teaching them how to learn critical thinking while watching some movie.
And at what age is this?
This is 6 to 16. And it works profoundly. They found they can increase vocabulary by like 85% by doing this. And it's just as simple as this. Twice a week, if your kid is sitting watching something, twice a week for 15 minutes, you sit with the kid and you go, why do you think the characters are doing what they're doing? What do you think the plot's all about? What do you think the director's trying to achieve? And you just ask them that question. And it only takes 15 minutes twice a week. Then even when you're not there, the kid is asking the same question while they're watching something else on their own. And they train themselves to do higher order thinking. And then from that point onwards, they're always in that mode. And the results are profound. The challenge is trying to get that in any kind of traditional system. That's just not that trivial.
I was looking at your technology model.
I have to go in a minute.
Yeah, one last question.
Yeah.
I was looking at your technology model going upwards the way we went.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the kids, what are the brain power of these kids coming out going to be like in 10 years? So our little 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, what kind of mentality, what kind of brain power are we going to have coming out of that?
It's not so much the brain power, but the fact that they can use the tools so effectively. Like when we grew up using the internet, you add it on as a later capability, and we're not native with it. Whereas the kids today, I say something to my 11-year-old, and he's looked it up on the internet and goes, "You're wrong about that." Right? And you're like, for frick's sakes, how is he doing this? And I'll give you a little example. So I drove my Tesla across the country. Just before I left, just as a little thing, I connected the Alexa to the Tesla. So I downloaded that skill, and I could say, "Hey, Alexa, honk the horn in the garage. The car honks." Didn't notice the 5-year-old watching. I'm down in Georgia somewhere, plug in the car there, and as I walk away, the car honks. I'm like, crap, did I leave the trunk open or something? And I nothing looks wrong, walk away again, car honks again. Now I'm like really scared. I'm in the middle of Georgia, what the hell am I gonna do? Call my wife up, I need the phone number for Tesla. And she yells out to the kid, "God damn it, get away from the Alexa," because 2,000 miles away, the kid is saying, honk the horn. And it's not conceivable to me that you can honk the horn from around the world, right? It's just not conceivable.
Well.
Yeah, but he's literally speaking to an Alexa like 2,000 miles away. That should not be possible. And even though I connected him, my mind can't conceive of that. His mind is like, yeah, it's normal. And this is why the metaverse type stuff will be so easy for them. They're going to grow up native in this, right? Yeah. If you're in college, you've never known a world without Wikipedia. That's like a profound thing.
Are books going out of the door?
No, I don't think so, because we found that you add the VCR, movies don't go out of date. We just add more capability over time.
Excellent.
All right.
Salim, hey, it's a pleasure.